So self-compassion, right? I've talked about it a bit, and I just want to continue talking about it because recently I took a step back, because I took a step back and I reflected for a little bit recently, and I realized that recently the way I've been talking to myself and the way I've been thinking about myself is not very nice. It's not very kind. The way the thoughts I've been having about myself and the way I've been speaking to myself is not nice, not kind at all. You know, I've learned, I've been learning how to be more kind to myself. It's not just about, because self-compassion is not just about, I know it may seem forced sometimes. It may feel forced. It may feel like, oh, this is cheesy, this is corny. Why am I doing this? But it's like, to me, it's about, self-compassion to me is about being, again, like I've said this before, but it's like being a friend to yourself instead of being like an enemy towards yourself. Like being a friend to yourself, like taking care of yourself. Like, I don't just mean like working out or eating healthy. Like, be there for yourself. Be there for yourself. Like, validate your feelings. You know, like that. And that's been the biggest thing, validating my feelings. You know, I was always because that was something that I always, I was always looking for other people to validate what I was going through, to validate my feelings. And the thing is that like nobody can tell, nobody knows unless you communicate it. Nobody knows what you're feeling. Nobody knows what you're thinking. And the thing I've learned is that like, instead of waiting for someone to validate my feelings, why don't I just validate them myself? Why don't I just give myself the love? You know, it's not about being obsessed with yourself. It's about taking care of your emotional needs. It's about, you know, that's what self-love and self-compassion is all about. It's just about, you know, a lot of it to me is just about being understanding of yourself, and being, when I say being kind to oneself, it's not about just being like, oh, it's okay, honey, it's okay. It's more so just like, maybe to some people it is, but to me, self-compassion is just like validating yourself, being in touch with yourself. You know, like when I stopped trying to run from my feelings, I started to face my feelings, and I started to, you know, here's the thing is like, the first time I remember, like, I mean, I don't know if it's the first time, but one of the first times past couple years that I actually started to like, actually allowed myself to, when I started to like be kinder to myself, I remember I just started crying. I just started crying because I realized that like I've been neglecting myself I've been neglecting my own emotional needs for so long. That I just felt bad for myself. I felt guilty, not in a ashamed way. Just I've been neglecting my own emotional needs for so long, and it was the first time where I was like, wow. So I would say self-compassion is mostly just about, if you're trying to be more kind to yourself, if you're trying to be more considerate of your own, because if you're always just like, if you're kind, because that's what like being a people pleaser is. It's like when you're kind to others, but it's at the expense of your own well-being, at the expense of your own mental health. That's what being a people pleaser is, and that's what I used to be. I made a video on people pleasing recently, but to me, like, yeah, it's not selfish. That's the other thing, is like, it's not selfish. It's not selfish. It's not bad, because once you start being more kind to yourself, at least for me, is like I started feeling more authentic. I started feeling more confident in myself, and it's something I work on daily, and I every like every like, that's what it is. It's a daily thing. It's not, you don't have all the answers and that's done. It's something you work at daily. And like, I don't need other people to approve of like what I'm feeling. I can just approve of myself. You can just approve of yourself when you know, and I realized that like, oh, I don't really, it's not that again, it's great, because when I started to like be more kind and compassionate towards myself, I started to view other people differently. I started to view life differently. My perspective on life changed when I changed how I changed how I treated myself. You know, there's a saying like, you are who you surround yourself with, and you know, if you surround yourself with like people that are negative and judgmental and you know, just, and those are the people that I used to surround myself with, because that's how I felt. Yeah, once I started to change that, I saw people differently. I looked at people differently. Because I was no longer hiding from who I was. I was authentic, and that's how it is. That's what self-compassion leads to. It leads to a more authentic life, because you're keeping up with your own emotional needs. You know, if you're like me, you might have grown up in a household where you were emotionally neglected, and your emotional needs weren't met, and that's kind of what led to my negative mindset, because I didn't know what it was like to have my emotional needs met. Well, once I started to like, as I got older, and as I started to like realize, instead of waiting for other people to fill those needs, I started to fill those needs myself. And it's a daily something you work on every day. But I've just found that my perspective on life has like changed, which I know sounds dramatic, but it's not. Like I And it's not something I have completely figured out. It's still something I have to, there are still days definitely where I feel, those old patterns start to creep in, those like, old behaviors start to come back, but, you know, I have to just, you know, even recently I've been struggling with that, but again, just like I'm more aware of like these thought patterns now, whereas before I wasn't. And that's all it really takes is just like stopping yourself and just being like, okay, I notice this is a thought pattern. This is not new. And what can I do about it now? You know, it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter what other. That's one of the other things is that like sometimes you might think, well, I don't want to offend other people. I don't want to hurt other people's feelings. I don't want to like cause conflict in like my relationships, but it's like you gotta the only person you're hurting when you're doing that is yourself. It's important to be there for yourself, to give yourself, to let yourself feel, like feel however you want to feel. That's what self-compassion is, having a good understanding of who you are and like being there for yourself. That's all it is. So it's what I've learned about self-compassion is just there's no right or wrong way to feel, just letting yourself feel. And so yeah, but thank you for sticking around. I don't usually do an outro on these videos, but I'm going to. All right, bye-bye.